Welcome back. This is Chris Fleming to another edition of Spirit Talk. This episode, let's talk about infestation. They're called demons, devils, imps. Who and what are these little guys? If you do a quick Google search to the internet and you type in, let's say, imp, it's a mythological being similar to a fairy or demon, frequently described in folklore and superstition. Now, this term actually originates from Germanic folklore. The imp was considered back then a smaller, lesser demon. It should also be noted that demons in Germanic legends were not necessarily always evil. Imps were often mischievous rather than evil or harmful, and in some regions they were portrayed as attendants of the gods. Now, imps are often shown as small and not very attractive creatures. It's not like you'd want to invite them to your birthday party. Their behavior is described as being wild and uncontrollable. To this end, it came to be believed that imps were familiar spirits, servants of witches and warlocks, where the little demons served as spies and informants. During the time of the witch hunts, supernatural creatures such as imps were sought out as proof of witchcraft, though often the so-called imp was typically a black dog, a black cat, lizard, toad, or some other form of uncommon pet. Now, imps can be found throughout art and architecture in the world, usually carefully and painstakingly hidden under the eaves of a church or the foot of a ceramic cup. They can also be found by the most interested and observant of people. Now, these imps can be described as an evil spirit or demon. Since their time, they've become overlooked, as not many people actually know exactly what they are. These imps are portrayed as servants to those of fey and magical beings, such as wizards. Because of this reason, they are commonly used in games as minions. What we're going to talk about today is infestation. Demons and these little creatures, which I've begun terming as imps, that can infest your house. Now, we're not going to say that they're attached to wizards or warlocks or anything like that. That was the belief many, many years ago. There's a scarier belief of what they're attached to. Now, my guest for this episode is Bill Vaile. He's the founder at United Paranormal International. His background is 10 years USA Navy submarine service. He served on board a U.S. fast attack submarine, and he taught basic, intermediate, advanced sonar classes, including physics of sound. Several years in aerospace and defense electronics, manufacturing as operations quality manager, with a few years as operation manager in a consumer electronics company. Doing this in between managing in aerospace and defense. He's a former pilot, flying for the aerospace companies and recreational, and he's one of the original founders of a Mickey Mantle celebrity golf tournament with Mickey and others, involved until Mickey's passing. One thing I have to say is, I do believe when I was younger, because I played baseball for like 12 years, my dad at a charity golf outing introduced me to Mickey Mantle. It's one thing I'll never forget. I'm pretty sure it was him. But without further ado, let's introduce Bill Vaile. Bill, thanks for coming to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Now, Bill, I got a hold of you because it was a little over a month ago. It was an afternoon. I went and turned on my cable, went to my DVR. I taped a bunch of the paranormal shows that are out there. And you recently appeared on Paranormal Witness, the episode called The Visitors.
Yes.
I was blown away, Bill, when I watched this. I mean, I was not even halfway through it, and I was calling my mom. I was calling friends of mine, called my friend Adam Bly, who's a demonologist and exorcist, and I was telling him, oh my God, this guy's had the same experience as me. And when you showed that drawing of what you saw, I cannot tell you the relief I felt. I actually broke down crying at one point because I realized that there's somebody else out there that has gone through this and that has come forward and talked about this, because I speak all over the country, and I've been doing this since 2006. I've talked about these imps, I've talked about these things, and I've had a few occasional people sitting in the back row come up to me at the end of the lecture, and they say, I've seen these things too, but they just don't want to talk about it. They're afraid. So I want to congratulate you, thank you for coming forward and being brave enough to talk about your experiences and then sharing it with us as well on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That is a big step. That's a big leap. You really toss around in your head whether to keep that to yourself, or especially with a background such as I have, and as a skeptic, and I was a strong skeptic. But when it's in your face, you can't deny it. It's something almost that's inside you that needs to come out, and it goes in stages. You tell one person, and then another person witnesses it, so you've got validation, and then you go all the way through to a stage where you want to maybe help people, and
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's an eye-opening, earth-shattering, soul-awakening experience to actually witness things that you may have heard in folklore or thought were mythology, that these things are real, that you can
Right.
actually see them.
Bill, let's expand upon that. Before this event that occurred, I'd like you to share with us how this began. But prior to that, what was going on in your mindset? What did you believe? Because I know you said you're a skeptic. So what kind of skeptic were you up until this point where it all started?
I didn't believe in ghost stories. I didn't believe in the paranormal. I was pretty hardly based in science, and I didn't believe that there was non-human entities could come around, or demons, or any of that kind of thing. I guess I believed in angels. Maybe I'd go to church from time to time, but I believed in that part of the church, but not the dark side of things. And so I explained everything away, or I ignored it. Things would happen. It was, I something just happened. It could be explained. I think I showed on the actual show Paranormal Witness where the bed was shaking. I looked for every explanation possible, including hypnopompic or hypnagogic experiences or brain tumors, anything but what it was, because I wasn't prepared to accept that possibility. And that's when it showed the bottle of water being thrown, and I really started having no choice but to believe it. I hadn't seen anything yet, nothing, no entities or anything, just poltergeist activity, I would call it.
Now, even in your background, it's important for people to understand. I mean, you're not some guy that just, worked behind a desk pushing a pen and paper and stuff like that. I mean, you've got a background in the military, physics, science. You were involved in some very, high class or intelligent type stuff that, the normal folk wouldn't be able to handle or put themselves in that situation. So you come from a very educated background.
Educated and psychologically tested, because they don't let you on a nuclear submarine without thorough and extensive psychological testing. And you have to be pretty grounded. You have to be able to deal with a lot of stress. Obviously, with your going to sea on a nuclear submarine, they don't let you go there unless your ability to handle stress and deal with adverse situations is very good. So I've been tested. I've been through that. I had a very high security clearance, so I'm not going to say what it was because I'm not sure I'm supposed to.
No, that's fine. I respect that.
Higher than secret and top secret clearance, and they don't give those away either. So yeah, I've got a pretty stable background, and I feel I'm a pretty stable person. And it took a lot to get me to the point where I had to realize that there was something else going on than natural causes.
Right. Now, in watching the show, I know how it is when they edit and they condense down. It doesn't tell the whole story. The story was incredible, and Paranormal Witness, I think, is a great show because it really covers things very interesting in the way they create the narrative and the story. The editing is phenomenal based on shows that are out there, and I think they do a great job. What was the event that occurred that you believe this all began? What caused it?
The one thing about the show, and I'd like to take the opportunity to clear this up. When I went to the lady's house that it showed in the show, I didn't actually go in the home. I could hear her screaming from the street, and it got louder. And I was fairly new on the job back then, and she was just on the other side of the door. So you can imagine somebody just on the other side of the door screaming. Or in a loud voice. I don't know that she was screaming. And she was saying, leave these people in the name of Jesus Christ, or in the name of Jesus Christ, leave these people, and that kind of thing. And I rang the doorbell a couple of times. She didn't answer, and then I finally knocked on the door, and she opened the door maybe 12 inches. And there were the three people in a prone position with their chests on a couch, and she was hovering over them, yelling those words. She gave me kind of a blank, almost a see-through you stare, and then just closed the door back in my face, never said a word, and went right back to, she never missed a beat, went right back to saying what she was saying. I never went back to the house. In fact, I called my office and said, look, this has hit my too weird button. I'm not, I don't care to go back to that house. And I really, at that point, I didn't know anything about exorcisms or curses or cleansings or any of that kind of stuff. I just thought she was either some nut or that these three had done something awful wrong, and she was a fundamental Christian, was preaching over them or something. I didn't know. I just knew it was a little too weird for my taste.
Why do you think she scheduled an appointment to have you there at the precise time when she was doing an exorcism?
She, I don't recall it. Now, you got to remember, this was probably back in 2002. And I don't remember, let's say that might be part of the narrative of the show more than actually being there exactly at a certain time.
Okay.
As I recall, it was on a Saturday, and we have appointments scheduled, say, like from 10 to 11. So they give us an hour window because in this area, traffic is terrible, and we could have a problem in traffic or whatever. And at that point in time, I was trying to get there pretty much on time. So I would imagine that when they scheduled the appointment, say at 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that I was probably there at 1 o'clock. I don't necessarily believe that she or I would think it would have to be some awfully powerful sorcerer or black magic person or something like that could time it to the second to do something like that. So I don't necessarily buy into that. I think if anything was to happen, I just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and something followed me home. Now, I'd
say so.
Yeah. Now, I do believe that's where it came from. I have no other explanation short of it having been in the house when I moved here, which I don't believe. And so that's the only thing I can think of is that that's what's happening.
Right. Well, the one thing that's known is during exorcisms, and they are casting out, creating deliverance of the demons, what can happen is if they're not actually sent to hell or taken away by angels or whatever the priest or the person that is performing the exorcism decides to place them or send them to, sometimes these, you can call them parasites. I mean, some of these demons are devils. The devils more than the demons. The devils tend to be parasites, these little creatures and stuff. They will attach themselves to people. Now, if you walked in that precise moment, complete stranger, and they're about to be cast out to hell or somewhere else, they can jump out of that person and attach themselves to somebody else or seek refuge somewhere else because now they've got that moment to break away. And you being there at the precise time is possibly what occurred. They realized, whoa, we got someone else here. We're not going to be cast out. We're going to follow them. So a couple of them, all of them, who knows, seems, based on your story, followed you home.
Yeah, and I will buy into that. I truly believe. Of course, I don't have any proof, but I truly can only believe that that's exactly what happened. That I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I didn't do anything personally wrong. I was a victim of opportunity for them. And I'm glad to hear you use the term devil and demon because there are differences.
There are.
And a lot of people don't know that.
Well, let's talk about that, and then we'll go into what started to occur. What is your opinion, based on your experiences, the difference between demon and devils?
Well, I believe there's a hierarchy. If you go with, I'm going to give you my belief, and everybody's got one. But my belief is that I believe in the Bible, and I believe that Lucifer, as he was in heaven, was the most gifted angel of all, and he wanted to sit at the right hand of God and was cast out when Jesus came along and took his vengeance on man, which is created in the image of God. And as in heaven, there's a hierarchy or choirs of angels. There are the same thing as that on earth in demons and devils, and that the devils are the main line. Call them the seven they head up to 7 deadly sins, or some people say 8. And those are the main guys over those. And then there's, of course, Satan, who he became after he was cast down as Lucifer, is in command of those. And then under that, they have legions of demons and minions and subdemons, which we get down to the level of the elementals or imps or whatever you want to call them. And those are kind of the drones, I call them. The little imps and minions are the little drones, the elementals. They're not very highly intelligent, and they need direction. And if they don't have direction, then they kind of run amok and do all kinds of prankster kind of things. But that's what I consider a devil. There's the 7 or 8 devils, and they control the minions and demons and subdemons.
Well put. I couldn't have said it better myself. When did you notice that something has changed or things were going on in your home?
I honestly, right away, there was, and I can't. You'll find out real quick that I don't call something paranormal unless I can prove it, unless I've got really good objective evidence. That's just my nature, my background. It's in my DNA, I think. But when I first moved into the house, it was the typical story, Chris. It was, I'd looked at 40 houses. I'd built a house on the lake and then realized that I was just being spoiled, having moved down here off of several acres, and realized that I didn't need the big house on the lake. I didn't need the payments, and was on a job I had never done before. Didn't know how that was going to go. So I went looking for homes, and I walked into this house, and it was a love at first sight. I immediately loved it. In fact, I had decided to buy it within 3 minutes of walking into it. And there was a lot of things that needed to be done. I made an incredibly low offer on it. They accepted that. So everything seemed to work out right. But then when I moved in, I had a very strong odor of bacon. I mean, very strong, just like somebody was in the kitchen frying bacon. And I believed it to be something in the vents. Don't know why I believed that, but my mother actually came down here for a month after I moved in, kind of helped get me moved in and that kind of thing. And she actually came out of her bedroom because she didn't eat pork or beef or anything, wanting to know why I was cooking bacon. And she actually argued with me, thought I had cooked bacon earlier and was not telling her because it was that strong and that obviously smelled like bacon. And that went on for a while. The bacon smell went away, and then things started. You'd hear noises or think you've seen something maybe out of the corner of your eye. All things that were explainable or ignorable. I'd feel something maybe hit the bed or maybe feel the bed move a little bit. But just enough to get your attention, but then also not enough to make you dwell on it or think it. It's like maybe you just imagined it or something. And I think the real first significant event was the massive bed shaking that was depicted fairly accurately in the show. And I have a massive bed. It's a King Edward king-size bed. And I actually did come, just like they showed in the show, I did come down and wiggle it, trying to see if I could make the thing move. And I couldn't. And it was tossing me from one side of the bed to the other. And that's when I started getting on the computer trying to explain it away again. Earthquakes or sonic booms, or the space shuttle Columbia actually exploded over my house. And I heard that. And having been in the aerospace business and having been friends with some astronauts before, it kind of hits close to home when it happens. I just couldn't explain that away. And what the thing I noticed, and I think probably I'd like to know if everybody experiences this, and I think they do, is that something like that major will happen,
right,
and then nothing
right.
for a long time, and it just lets you let your guard down and let you forget about it. And it didn't happen. It wasn't as bad as I thought. It was something natural, earthquake that wasn't reported. Explain it away. And then they come at you again.
Right. Well, Bill, it was a couple of years ago. I remember when my girlfriend at the time lived with me. I woke up hearing what sounded like a truck going down the street, and my entire room was shaking. And I was like, "What the heck was that?" And there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake. And my mom called me, "Hey, did you hear we had an earthquake like 5:45 a.m.?" I go, "Oh my God, I felt it, you know." But that was a couple years ago. About a little over a year ago, she no longer lives here and stuff like that. We broke up. I hear this like a growl come from my closet. It was like that. And then as it was doing that, my bed was shaking like this, and I'm like, what the hell? And I'm looking, going, and I'm in, I was in deep REM state, and it woke me up, and I'm out of it, and I'm feeling the bed shake, and I'm looking towards that closet, and I'm sensing something from that closet. So I just kind of yelled at it and just said a prayer and went back to sleep. But my skeptical mind decided the next day just to double check on the internet to see if there was any tremors, nothing. No tremors, no earthquakes, no nothing. Not like what happened the other time, which clearly was. This wasn't. So it got me thinking, like, oh my God, how can they, make, and it's a question you wonder, do they run up to the bed and do they move it with their hands? Do they manifest the hands and they do it? Or is it a form of energy that they can manipulate the EMF field around you and cause it to do that? I don't know.
Well, I have seen, and we've all seen video of earthquakes on the news. And in my mind, that's exactly what it feels like,
right.
a major earthquake, just like you described. It's interesting that you said a growl in the closet. There's a part of the story I've never told, and I'm not about to start telling it now, but I will tell a bit of it. There's much worse part of the story that I haven't revealed because it involves somebody that's an innocent victim in this, and they just don't need to be exposed as being part of it because they're no longer in the picture. But I had seen probably a 6 foot tall the typical hat man shadow figure. But instead of going away, it actually approached me and was no more than at the most 18 inches from me the whole time. And I had a very, very good several second witness of this shadow figure. And the interesting thing about it is it never showed any movement. It moved, it traveled, but it didn't show any, I call it anthropomorphic motion movement. It was almost like a mannequin and floating. When it moved down toward me, it just kind of floated like it was being pulled, and didn't seem to notice me, but I felt evil. Now, this is exactly what you figure. It had like a trench coat or a duster, the fedora, Elliot Ness type hat on. And I could see clearly features, head, shoulder, nose, things like that. Looked like a person, medium build, but I know it wasn't. I just the fear, the evil that you could sense from it. I have to tell you, that was probably the scariest I've been through this whole episode, because I didn't know when it approached me that it wasn't going to turn into something else and just devour me or something. I just didn't know. But the reason I bring that up is I didn't tell this other person about this because I didn't want to scare them. And I just gotten back from a long vacation in Florida and Mexico. And a couple of weeks later, they mentioned seeing it and described it exactly the same and said that it was friendly, and which we hear, that they try to sometimes lie and act like they're friendly. But when I explained that it wasn't and what it was, then it scared them. And I said, do not tell it to go away. It's not friendly. It's evil. Do not let it hang around. If it shows up again, tell it to leave. And it appeared in the closet. And that's what reminded me of this. And when they said, I know you're not friendly, you're evil, go away, they said it growled, just like you said, and it said 3 times, kill Bill. Yeah.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I didn't witness that, Chris. I'm just relaying what was told to me. But the thing that makes it believable is this person described exactly the same thing I'd seen.
Right.
And they
For
wouldn't
my
have known
listeners
that without having seen it.
Bill and I have talked on the phone before because we had to share our experiences, and there's so many remarkable similarities. It's scary. In listening to what Bill just said, and he's just told me this for the first time, is back in 2007, one of the girlfriends I had, I'll just say her name, it doesn't matter, named Dana, she woke me up in a sheer panic, middle of the night. And what's wrong? And she was holding me, she was crying. She said, she was sleeping on the left side of the bed, and she says, there was a man, all black, with a fedora hat, that appeared at the edge of the bed, and he was pointing at me. And she just said she was terrified. And I'm like, what? I mean, you saw the Shadow Man? And she's like, what do you mean Shadow Man? And I explained it to her. I'd never seen the Shadow Man with the fedora hat. I've seen shadow people left and right. Never seen the one with the fedora hat. And then I'm sitting there thinking, why? Well, this was a precursor. That was 2007. It wasn't until 2009 that I saw the imp come out of the closet that I haven't seen in over 35 years. So it was as if they were preparing for the next step to happen. I don't know how this Fedora Man's involved or what it is. No idea. But I just wanted to mention it because you just did as well. Please.
Well, let me explain the hat thing, or at least my theory on the hat thing. Because I'm not that it matters, but I'm a master mason and Scottish Rite and Shrine Mason, all that. But also because of I study history. The hat is significant. Not so much today, but down through history, a hat has indicated authority, command. That's why emperors and kings wore hats. Judges wore hats. That is a symbol of authority. And to me, that's telling, the reason that it has a hat on. To me, indicates it's a powerful, commanding figure. And I called it in the show, they called it the general because I call it the general. I call it that thing is the main devil or demon. And I believe that. And by the way, that's when my little imps or elementals or whatever started showing up, was after its appearance. So that ties into your story as well.
I mean, there's just so much, and I'm sitting there just reflecting in my mind, and I don't want to talk too much because I want to hear your story. But just all these things that have occurred with these imps, you go through different emotions. You get angry, you just want to break down because you just want it to stop. You question your own thoughts because they're not your normal thoughts. All these things that occur, and we'll get to this near the end. When was it you first started noticing these creatures? These little creatures.
I would tell you that I first started noticing them in a really kind of a discreet way. The same way that you might mention a shadow figure, not the shadow man, but the shadow figures. I've seen hundreds of those. And those are the ones that dart out of the corner of your eye. And they're a different kind of thing. But I would... Yeah, I think you've seen those too.
Oh, well, Bill, it's just my childhood started first with the tap on the shoulder, the voices, and then seeing these things. Everybody that's heard me speak, thousands of people have heard me speak. I've talked about it. That's how it started, with these shadow figures coming out of the corners as if the shadows were becoming alive in the corner of the rooms and taking a human form. I'm like, what is this? My dad said they were nightmares until they ended up pulling the sheets off my bed. And then these things started completely manifesting and walking around the house. That's all started well before these little creatures came.
Yeah. The shadow things come first, and then the little creatures. And by the way, I'll tell you about the cat and the snake also here in a minute if you want. But the little imps, or I call them elementals for lack of a better word. But here's what I think: they are the leprechauns, the trolls. It depends on what part of the country or what part of the world you're in as to what you call them. Everybody's got their own little cultural name for them.
Right.
But I do believe they're all either of the same ilk or the same thing. I don't know, the same family maybe. And I could be wrong. That's just my hypothesis about it. But I would see, out of the corner of my eye, I would think I would see something moving, and as soon as I turn my head, it would dart back around the corner. and I'm thinking animals or something. Because it was gone. I mean, it would kind of catch your attention. Maybe like a leaf blowing outside that you catch out of the corner of your eye, and you look out and well, there's the leaf. But this time you didn't see anything; it was gone. The first night that we seen them full on was where it depicted my brother and sister-in-law over here, and I have to tell you, and I'm sure this will bring something home to you too. You're living this by yourself.
Yeah.
For the longest time, and it's such a relief to have validation from somebody else that, oh my God, now somebody else has seen it too, that you can share it with. It's like a load lifted at one time, but it's like another load put on because now you can't deny it because other people have seen it. You can no longer deny it. It's there.
Absolutely.
But that was the night my brother and sister-in-law were here, and they also seen them. Now, since then, I have had literally dozens of people witness them here. I don't know if there's another better documented case of people seeing them, but they got to be pretty pervasive around here. Those and the other shadow figures, not the shadow men, got to be very pervasive. And I've had 2 or 3 other people actually see the shadow man also in here. And along with that, I was going to tell you the cat thing.
Well, first, describe these little imps, these little devils that you saw. Describe them so the listeners can get a visual.
I'm not very good at visualizing. I will tell you the best I can. They are not transparent. They are what I call translucent is a better term.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't solid, but they're not transparent. And translucent is the only word I can think of. You can actually see different shades of not color, at least in the ones that I've seen, but maybe grays and whites. Now they move pretty quickly, so I could be wrong on that. There could be color there, and they just were moving quickly. But they were probably, from my perspective, maybe 2.5, 3 feet tall at the very most. Mm-hmm. Slightly stooped over, very slightly. But they were moving quickly, almost like running when I seen them. So it could have been the fact of them bent over forward a little bit running, but they appeared to be a little bit stooped or hunchbacked to me. My brother described them as the FTD guy without the wings. I think that's probably a little bit too easy an explanation.
Well, how quickly they move? How quickly they move? Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where he got that. To me, if you picture a cross between an alien and the typical picture of a troll that you see,
absolutely.
Maybe that's what I would describe them as.
Absolutely. I mean, reflecting on my childhood, when I saw these faces come out of the wall for the first time, there's about 4 of them. Look at me, then disappear. Come back out, look at me, disappear, then go through. And then all of a sudden out of the closet comes this big black mass like a tornado, which I knew they were inside that tornado and that they were going to try to suck me into it. And I raced out of the room and went into the other room where we had a sitter that was watching, and she saw this too and started praying, and she quit the very next morning, said I had the devil in the house. But it wasn't until another time I sleep with the light on in the hallway, I felt that impending evil, that doom, that fear. Same I felt when this thing came out of the closet, and it woke me up, and I'm looking in the hallway, and I see one of these little guys. Well, at the time, they seemed a lot bigger to me because I was only about 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. And they walked across the hallway into my sister's room, and I saw them even cast the shadow. And there'd be other times where I'd see their shadows, that moving, that lurching type gait, where they would kind of lean over slightly, like almost like an ape, but they weren't an ape because they were thinner. They were like a cross between a gait of a reptile, dinosaur, the smaller ones, and a ape, the way they moved. And I remember the fear of seeing them, but it wasn't until back in 2009, it was August or September 2009, that it walked out of the closet. And over 35 years later, as an adult, I'm seeing this thing and realizing within split seconds, it's a lot shorter and smaller than I remember it because I'm a grown adult now. And it had those big eyes, similar to an alien, but not as big as those gray aliens. It was smaller. Had bumps to it. It was more like the color that I saw was like a beige vomit color, maybe if a hint of green, not too much green, but more of a beige. Had bumps all over its body, a little bit pointed ears, and it looked like it had 3 toes in front and possibly only 4 fingers, but 3 fingers in front and then the thumb. So 3 fingers and then like a thumb. And as I watched this thing lurk forward, and it knew I saw it, and then it lurched back into the darkness, became semi-transparent. Then it became solid again as it came out of the darkness and came forward. I realized, I knew right then and there it was real. Everything that happened to me as a child, not that I ever denied it, but to see it this many years later as an adult, I've been talking about it, researching it, and then to see it again, it was not only at first I almost reverted back to my childhood fear and expression, but right away I turned to anger that all these years it had terrorized me as a child, and now I'm an adult and I can stand up to it. So I went after it and it disappeared. My girlfriend at the time was like, "Oh my God, what did you see?" And I told her. She was freaked out, blah, blah, blah. And then things they appeared a few times more, these things. The thing is, they can sometimes be mistaken as a child, because I remember I was away. I get a phone call. She's in a panic. She says, "When are you coming home?" I go, "Why?" She goes, "What do you?" She goes, "I'm locked in the bathroom." I said, "What do you mean you're locked in the bathroom?" I go, "Someone locked you in the bathroom?" She goes, "No, I locked myself in the bathroom." I said, "Why?" She goes, "I saw them." I go, "What do you mean you saw them?" She goes, "I saw a child run across the mirror, but it wasn't a child." I go, "What was it?" She goes, "I don't know. Just get your ass here." So I got home. She came out of the closet, was crying, was emotional. I believe she saw one of these little imps, and she just did not want to talk about it because she was so terrified. So these things, the only thing I ask you too is because you and I have spoken, you sent me some of the evidence, you've played some of the recordings, you sent me the video of the mist, which is extraordinary because you're using night vision, you've got the lasers, and it was shown on the episode of The Visitors, but you see this mist just start to appear and then the laser moves. What's significant about that for me is these things you would see them, but then all of a sudden they would change into a black mass and they would take off. Or you'd see this black mass go flying across the room, and then the black mass would turn into one of these things. It's as if they are able to convert their form into this type of mist that can pass through walls and can move so quickly that it goes out of our range of perception, whether it's our visual spectrum or whether our eyes can't capture something that moves at such a, I don't want to say shutter speed because that's related to camera, but moves so quickly that our eyes really can't slow down enough to see them when they are in high speed velocity. Have you run into any more of those mists turning into them or mist associated with them?
I have photographs of my brother was staying at the foot of my bed, and his lower body all of a sudden got very cold. And somebody else that was here said, "We'll move, and I'll take photographs there." And when they did, they photographed two pictures of a mist at the end of the bed. I have a video. I don't know if you have that or not, but I have a video of a black mass. It looks like it's dropping from the ceiling, and my window is probably 3 feet wide, so I'm guessing this black mass is probably close to that. It's bigger than it appears in the video. And you can hear an audible thump when it hits the floor, so it has mass. And then, as you go through the video, you can see, and it's quick, as most actual paranormal videos are, it's quick, but you can see a black shadow figure, complete with hat and everything, dart from left to right from where the black mass hit the floor. Now we have that on video, and that is within a couple of feet of where the laser video was taken, where the mist. And then one morning I had a black mass at the foot of my bed, and I actually kicked it. And I did it more out of reaction than I did being brave. But when I kicked it, it just dissipated. It just like vanished right before my foot got to it. So they have intelligence. They can react to us. I don't know how they have intelligence. I don't know what makes them up. The actual investigator that was in there when the laser moved professes no visual observation of anything, but I don't know that he was looking necessarily in that direction either. I do know that it scared him. Now, there's a precursor to that. A week before that, we had the cameras set up in there and the laser in the same position, and we were actually in the living room, and we heard a loud crash in the bedroom. So we went in there. You can hear somebody go, oh, something fell or something. You can hear them in the background. So we go in there, and the laser had been thrown off of the, I'll call it an arm wall for lack of a better word. In reviewing the audio of that, there's an EVP that's very clear that says they're coming, put it back on, and then you hear the laser being thrown, and then you hear us going in there. And so all the video cameras were either turned off, and by the way, these things would actually turn the video cameras off. You could hear the clicking of them going off, or the typical battery drain, or they just didn't work. But we did get audio of it, so we do have that on audio. So the next week is when we got the actual laser moving. We got lucky, and I don't know why, but I almost attribute that to like an almost curiosity kind of a thing. Like, hey, there's something new. What is it? I don't know why I think that, but it just almost seems to be what it is. They're investigating it. You know, is it something that maybe can do something to them? They don't know what it is yet.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's all I know. I've seen many other things and had many other experiences here, but I think you're right. The Hat Man or the Shadow Man is, I personally believe it's the most evil one of all of them.
You got to wonder if the Shadow Man, if he took the hat off and he took the overcoat off, if it's just a demon hiding underneath that so it doesn't intimidate you as much, because it doesn't want you to actually see what it looks like. You know, that it's not actually a man or woman at all, but it's some type of creature that is just covering itself up. You have to wonder if it's doing that, like it's trying to be top secret, you know?
Well, I actually believe that could be true. I will tell you, and I'm sure anybody that's experienced this will validate this, that when that is present, there is an absolute perceptive change in the atmosphere. It's dark and foreboding.
Mm-hmm. Feels
like maybe the humidity or the air is thicker. You sense a feeling of foreboding or doom. And I felt that same feeling in association with the Shadow Man. And I only felt it when it was around. Now, for the longest time, and I mean months, my whole house was dark and foreboding, feeling like that. In fact, it was until I had that, what showed in the show, me having that final manifest yourself episode with it, which I wouldn't mind talking about here in just a minute, because there's an important aspect of that maybe people should hear. But I think the imps come in and set the stage under the direction of this, I'll call it the general. I think he makes an appearance when he's ready to up the ante or maybe get more personally involved. And that's when you get the dark, foreboding feeling and you start having worse things happen. And I've had the same thing. I like to tell people, if you can think of a way to be attacked by a demonic force, I've been attacked by it. Mm-hmm. I've been scratched and hit and punched and poked and burned and everything that you can have. It's just an interesting thing. That's their tactic, and that's all they got. I mean, fear is their denial is their main weapon. Fear is their main tactic. That's the way I like to look at it.
Absolutely, and I know when the person was living with me, they would see it, they'd be terrified, and then they start denying it. Well, maybe I just imagine it. Maybe I just mm-hmm. We would get in arguments about that, because I've been dealing with this my whole life, and I tried to warn them that you need to be careful in what you do, what you put in your body, or anything, what you're thinking, because these things can manipulate that. They can use that to their advantage, or they can twist those thoughts around, make you think or do things that you wouldn't normally do. And that was the concern for me. And the other thing is, too, is not to show fear, because when you show fear, it gives them power. I mean, here I am. I see this thing come out of the bed. Well, no, I'll get to that one, that story in a second. But I see this thing come out of the closet, and my first reaction was I looked away, and my eyes got like deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, boom, I'm reverted back to my childhood in complete fear. And then I'm like, no, I'm not afraid anymore, because I've dealt with so much in those many years. But now I'm angry that, number one, I know you exist. Number two, you're back in my life. The question is why. Three, now I can stand up to you because I'm a strong person, physically, mentally, spiritually, and I went flying after them. So there's no fear on my part, but you and I have had the conversation. We won't get into it because there's other people involved, but the fear is not so much because of them. The fear is what they can do to other people around you.
Exactly, yes. I fear people more than I fear them. I fear
Absolutely.
what they can psychologically do to another person, and that and by the way, and you well know that happened to me. I've actually been in the hospital many times, which a lot of people don't know. I've been hospitalized. I've had ambulances here. I'm probably lucky, very lucky to be here. But people believe that, and I believe incorrectly, but again, that's my belief. Everybody has a belief. I believe people believe that demons feed off of our, and metaphorically maybe they do, but they don't. It's not like consuming food to them. They don't gain energy from our fear like that. They make us weaker, so relatively speaking, they get stronger, but they're demons. They're a strong force. They don't need to feed off of our energy or our fear emotion to grow in strength. They need to diminish our ability to resist through fear to get us to a weakened state so that we subliminally invite them in to do more.
Right.
And in that way, they grow stronger. And yes, that we can go through the 5 or 6 stages of possession and all that kind of stuff. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to go through those different stages through obsession and
Absolutely.
oppression, obsession, and possession.
It got to a point, 2010, where I was getting possessed, where I'd just be sitting watching TV, and all of a sudden, boom, I can't move. I'm completely paralyzed, and then words start shooting out of my mouth. And I'm still conscious, but yet words are shooting out of my mouth. Another consciousness, another intelligence is now speaking through me in profanity and saying stuff, either at me or at the person that's in the room. And this was happening repeatedly. It was also happening. I'd be in a dead sleep, and all of a sudden I'd start doing this. A person would wake me up saying that I was screaming and yelling and I was talking things. I go on and on. I mean, a black mass shoots over the ceiling. I see this black mass, and I'm like, oh, God, here we go. And I roll over. Next thing you know, there's this demon, not one of these little creatures, but the Lord demon on top of me, holding me down. And I don't see it at first. I'm being pressed down. I can't breathe. I'm being crushed. The other person's screaming because they see my body concaving into the bed, and they realize there's something on top of me, but they can't see it. And they're asking what's going on, and I can barely get a word out. But then all of a sudden, I see this demon begin to manifest on top of me, which I'll be honest with you, I wasn't afraid because very strong faith. I was more curious, like, oh my God, I've never seen anything or heard of anything like this before. And I was more inquisitive looking at this creature that was on top of me. It was clearly 7 to 8 feet tall, but it was sloped like an S, like slanted down, kind of like the alien from the movie Aliens. But yet it was solid black, really thin, had these porcupine quills in the back of its head going backwards and off its arms. And then it had this demonic face like a black snake. And its eyes were like a yellowish lime green, and it was hissing at me, but it was speaking telepathically, saying, we hate you, we hate you, we hate you, we hate you, we hate you. And at first, it sounded like insects, like this sounds like insects fluttering, but it was actually the quills.
I'm hearing voices on the phone here, and I don't know what's coming from. Now it just went away when I started speaking.
Okay.
Now it's back when you're speaking.
Oh, I don't hear it, but I've got hairs on my arms standing up. Yeah, it doesn't like being talked about. This was a Lord Demon, and swishing was actually Bill's going back and anger.
I actually can't hear you, Chris, from the.
Okay. Yeah, it's happening. I don't want me to tell you. Can you hear me now, Bill?
No. No, it sounds like 1,000 grasshoppers when you're speaking.
Bill, that's the sound.
Wow. I don't know what that is.
You're getting to hear it then.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfect.
Okay, I'm hearing you in some sort of like rapid tremolo or staticky. I'm hearing like 100 of your voices at once.
Okay, I'm getting chills up and down my arms, okay, which I believe is possibility that it's doing something for you to hear it. I don't know. Let me continue. This thing was standing above me, holding me down. I wasn't afraid of it. Then all of a sudden, this white light appears out of the wall, tackles it, and next thing you know, there's a battle going on between these white lights and these black masses, which was, I'm not going to get into the whole thing because it becomes biblical and everything, and people won't even believe me. It doesn't matter. Happened. My girlfriend at the time, ran into my one room, got holy water that Adam Bly gave me, and she was throwing holy water on me, which I believe that kind of helped in bringing the white things there, but also tackling them, getting this thing off me. But I firmly believe at that point I came in contact with the Lord Demon that is in control of these imps. Are you still there, Bill?
Yes, I can actually hear you now.
Okay. That was in control of these imps that I finally got to see it. I've done research and I can't figure out what it is. Whether it's Leviathan was the closest thing I can say. It might not even be a known demon in biblical terms, and I don't even want to give it credit by naming it at this point. But for me, it was like, oh my God, I actually saw the entity that was in control of this. There was a Lord demon that appeared. I believed it was always Satan himself beside a bed when I was a child with my father. Lit up the room, screamed. My dad went flying off the bed in sheer panic and terror. I scrambled across the bed to his safety. He held me down like commando style and basically protected me until this thing vanished. And then he was picking up the phone at 4 a.m, calling the police department. The old rotary phones.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, I'm calling the police. I'm like, but it's gone. He goes, I know. And then he put the phone back down. Then he called again, and he was in sheer panic. I know now why my father became he always was Catholic, but became even more devout Catholic, going to Sunday every day because of that, to protect himself with the Lord Jesus and the Virgin Mary. So for me, it's an entire life history of dealing with this, but it was gone for a long period of time. Then it comes back to wreak havoc in a crucial point in your life to try to destroy your life, whether it's for possession or to prevent you that something you're going to be doing, influencing people, whatever it may be. They just want to create chaos. With these things in your house that you've dealt with, obviously there was chaos going on in relationships and things you were dealing with, even your own sanity. You begin to question that. Bad luck starts to occur everywhere. And it's like you get to a point where you just don't feel like you can get out of it. And this is what I've gone through in the last 4 years, and I'm just starting to rise above my head above water, so to speak, in dealing with this. I had a friend here a week ago, did a cleansing of the entire house. I had 3 other friends did a cleansing of me in the house 2 weeks prior to that. So I believe that there is a calming period right now before these things ever come back. I believe I've got room to rebuild myself and recuperate. But, Bill, we talked about this. You and I spent 3 hours on the phone one day. Is you get to a point where it's not that you want to give up. You just want it to stop. And you start thinking of things you would never think of before because you just want it to stop. And it's I can only imagine the problems throughout history that these things have occurred to other people that just weren't strong enough to deal with it.
Well, I actually run counter to a lot of people's beliefs on much of what's going on in the world today. I'm sorry, but I believe when a mother kills her children, that's not normal.
Right.
When a kid kills their mother and father and family, I'm not saying that it's all demonic or possession. I wouldn't say that, but I think there's more more going on rather than less going on. I just don't think society is set up, and perhaps by demonic forces, not to accept that. Like I said, its biggest ally is denial, to keep hidden, and so it can work, and it can do its damage in secret, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And in my particular case, where I was attacked physically, as I said, in about every way you can be. Mine was isolation. It would do things to other people who would come here, or it would. My computer has been totally destroyed 3 times. Couldn't connect to the internet, as we saw on the show, trying to get the internet connected, and that voice came on. Mine was always isolating me, keeping people away, damaging people that tried to help me. I've had so many lives literally destroyed of people that tried to help. That's beyond the pale of coincidence, and that's what I say. My life has become a long line of coincidence,
right,
since this happened. Personally, obviously I've had to spend. I'm having heating and air conditioning problems now. But it seems to be constant things like that. As far as personal bad luck, I mean, my work has been okay. Now my health has suffered since I moved here greatly. Right. So things like that. Maybe I'm always the optimistic guy that overlooks the things that happen, but maybe observes the things that happens to other people more clearly. Because I certainly have had, I hear the same thing with the technician. Have you ever heard that before? No, and I never want to hear it again. Is it technically possible for it to happen? No, it's not. To my computer being wiped out, and the guy at the computer store saying, I've done this 35 years and I've never seen this happen. I don't know. I have no explanation of how it could happen.
Bill, you talk about things that happen, health-wise. Is we talked about this. When these things reappeared over 35 years, came out of the closet. It was that was September 9th, and then September 23rd, and I got in a car accident, got rear-ended. That I'm still suffering problems in my C1, C2 in my neck and in my brain. I had a traumatic brain injury. Then I had, about 6 months later, broke my nose, tore my eye, all within a span of about 8 months after seeing these things. I was in a major injury from a car accident, broke my nose, tore my eye, had other physical problems that occurred as well. Causes you to go into depression, all the type of stuff that I was dealing with, to where I was so run down. That's when the possessions started to occur.
Yeah, long list of coincidences. That's what I call it.
It's crazy. Just no way. I mean, it just made no sense to me. And it's tough. I mean, when you're physically, then mentally, and then spiritually wondering why this is happening to you, you get to a point where you just don't know why. You're just so frustrated. There's so much more I want to talk about. I mean, I've seen the videos. You sent me some of the clips in the videos with the mist, and I've seen it. It's remarkable capture. The shadow coming down from the ceiling, for some people, may be hard to see unless you've seen these things before and you know what to look for, and I noticed it in the video. Dramatic for me, because I've seen those shadows in my house. People that have come to my house have seen them. People don't believe in ghosts have seen them in my house, seen these shadow people. The thing is, you bring someone to your house, they have an experience, or something happens to them when they leave. I just had, about 4 weeks ago, I want to do the last investigation in my house before we wiped the house clean. The 2 guys that were here, we heard a child laughing upstairs, heard a woman that shushed us. We got some incredible EVPs. One of them, I believe, are the Imps, which I'll play on this show in a second. Then the next day, one of them, David, tells me that he's feeling oppressed, he's feeling angry, irritated, a whole bunch of things that's just not him. The other friend, John, goes home that night. It's his wife's anniversary, lights a candle in celebration of anniversary, and the entire candle goes in flames. wax does not catch on fire. It's the wick that does. But the
Exactly.
entire wax of the candle caught in flames to where he had to douse it twice to try to get it out.
Wow.
Scared the hell out of him because he knows that's not normal, and he's lit these types of candles before. Coincidence after being in my house? I think not. Happened to both these people. People that have been in my house have had dreams or nightmares, never had it before. A friend had the sheets pulled off him. A girl saw 5 times. This was only about 2 months ago. 5 times a black mass shoot across my family room. She's never believed in ghosts or saw ghosts in her life. A guy who fought in Iraq twice saw the black mass in my house, wanted to come back, investigate it, and he heard the little girl yell out while he was in the house. So people that have never had experiences because of the activity of these things, or whatever they're involved with, can cause other people to have experiences as well. And that's how real this is.
I want to. This is a good point to add something. I on my Facebook page, I've had a lot of people join my Facebook page since the show, and I've had a lot of people offer to come to my. Here's the typical line: I've never experienced this, and I want to. And can I come over and experience it? I want to tell everybody, no, you don't want to experience this. Trust me, you don't. This is not a game. It's dangerous, and you do not want involved.
The thing is, people don't understand it, is it not only will it attack your health and destroy your health, physical problems that you'll have that affects your job, your finances, but also affect other people in relationships, cause you to destroy relationships or get in the wrong relationships, can cause you to have addictions. Not that I got to admit, there was a period of time I started drinking just to go to sleep because my neck was bothering me. And after about a month and a half, I said, I'm not going to keep drinking wine and this and that every night just to go to sleep. I don't want to become addicted, so I stopped. But it can cause you to get into addictions and not even realize it because you're trying to combat it. They will find your weaknesses, they'll find your strengths, and they will turn your strengths against you, and they will amplify your weaknesses. And that's something that people need to understand how real this is. Now, Bill, you've captured some recordings when you were telling some of your friends, the audio expert, for example, you caught some things on audio of these things talking, correct?
Yes.
Now, Bill, when that happened, I mean, what were you going through? It was remarkable. How did you feel with the fact that he actually caught it on recording?
Well, there are actually two. One is totally different, and it's speaking just like you and I would speak, except very malevolent, very forceful, very commanding, very threatening, but in a language, and I've always wanted to say Sumerian, and I don't know why I want to say that, something that came into my head, but some sort of ancient, dead-sounding language. We've actually recorded it, and which was depicted in the show with Michael, and Michael is an excellent sound man. In fact, he produces many radio shows, has thousands of dollars worth of sound equipment. He knows what he's doing. And he actually got data recorded, but it would not play back. So we've never been able to capture that one. The one that you have is the one that comes on more often. And you can hear breathing, and you can hear that breathy you in it. I will say that I recorded it onto my phone, and my phone had the ability to cut it in half speed. And when you can cut it in half speed, no better quality than my phone would do, it sounds a lot more ominous and more like words. But what you'll hear in this recording is the breathing, the breathy you. My brother says he hears one thing. I've heard other people say other things that they hear. Mm-hmm. I hear what sounds like something in a voice that has been speeded up quite a bit, and then then it says all that stuff, and then it stops, takes a deep, raspy breath, and says you. So whatever it said, then it says you, and then it goes and says a bunch of other stuff real fast, and that's what it sounds to me. My first reaction was hang up the phone, and that's exactly what I said to people, and they couldn't hear me.
Yeah, let's play it right now.
Okay.
You know, what's remarkable about this is when you listen to it, I mean, it just gives you chills because it's something you're not you're not used to hearing, but it's also something in your nightmares. I mean, here's a clip I want to play as well that we captured at the investigation. I had put 2 recorders, one in the basement. I put one in my extra bedroom, and I closed the door. This was about 3 to 2 hours before my 2 friends were coming to my house to investigate. And the reason why I did this was because consciously I knew they were coming. We were going to investigate. So these entities can pretty much read your mind. So while I was doing errands around the house, I wanted to see if they were going to make any commentary regarding this. And they did. What I believe I captured was, it says attack. And then I hear a ghost in the house that yells out imps. And then you hear another thing, a direct command, such as attack them now or something like that. Here's the clip. Now, for some people that listen to this, they may not hear it, but you can distinctly hear the raspy voice yelling out, and then it yells out again. I have other recordings over the years of capturing these things, and I have a recording actually from the late 70s in my house as I'm telling a story, and you hear what sounds like someone clearing their voice or a demonic scream. I'm going to play that right now.
I was in the house and the hearing got fast. Then we went downstairs to check it out, and downstairs was a mess. The thing never called back. Then we ran outside to the park, and
now, when you have something that's so many years apart, I mean, these things are timeless. Bill, where do you think these imps, these little devils, actually come from?
You know, I put a lot of thought into that, Chris, and you can go back to ancient Sumerian stories about the Anunnaki and things. I cannot wrap my head around where they could have came from. I believe I know where the devils and the demons came from. And the only thing I can figure, because there are quote unquote 9 choirs of angels, and the angels run all the way from seraphim all the way down to just angel, is that perhaps they're just the lowest form of angel. Because you've got the cherubims, the thrones, the dominions, principalities, archangels, things like that. And they kept that same power structure, the same choir structure, as they call it, when they were cast out. That's the only thing that I can connect logically. I don't know that I buy that. But if I don't buy that, I don't have an answer where they came from. I don't think that Satan... I think that the prevalent theory is that Satan created them. I don't know that he has the power to create life. But that's the only 2 theories that I can come up with, is that either A, they're the lowest order of angel, or B, Satan created them.
These imps, these devils, little devils, we see them through all out of art, architecture, everything. I mean, even Harvey Comics created the little devil.
Yeah.
And it's kind of comical, but they've had an impact on our consciousness, on our life. And sometimes I call them the ancient ones too, because they're obviously ancient. They've been around for a long period of time throughout history, and you can find them throughout history, through many cultures.
Yeah, I think they've been around much longer than we've been around.
Right. So the question is, I mean, did they evolve from the Nephilim, daughters of men? Were they around prior to the Garden of Eden? Did they come after the Garden of Eden? Who knows?
I have one of those minds that can put 2 and 2 together, and sometimes come up with 5, and sometimes come up with 4. But the Nephilim story, I have problems with, because angels don't die, and so have no need to procreate, and so don't procreate. They don't have the ability to procreate. Mm-hmm. So my question on the Nephilim story is, how did they come to Earth as watchers, is what they called them, and as they say in the Bible, lay with earthly women and produce offspring when they don't have the power or the ability to procreate?
That's a good question. I asked my friend when he was here last week, Adam, I asked him about that, and he says, well, because God allowed some of the angels to go down and take a human form like man to deliver messages to Mary and to some other individuals to warn them or tell them that we'd be giving birth. And some of them have the ability to do that or were allowed to do that, but just never came back. And I'm like, okay, I can't deny that. But or is there something that we've turned it into that belief that that's what it is, or is there some other type of race or beings that existed that the Bible just doesn't cover? Whether it's extraterrestrials or whether it's some other type of dimensional creatures that were also created at one time, but yet the Bible doesn't know how to make sense of that, and so they call them fallen angels.
Yeah, and if you go back to the ancient Sumerian, the Anunnaki created man to do their menial tasks. That story would fit. The other story that might fit is that the Watchers or fallen angels, they were actually sent there to watch over man, and they became infatuated with earthly women. That's the story goes. Could have maybe possessed man, and somehow or other through that possession and procreation imparted some of the demonic or angelic or whatever forms, and there's two theories on Nephilim, meaning great man or giant, and there's arguments because they say that Goliath was a Nephilim and he was a giant.
It's funny you bring that up, Bill, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I was just in Seattle at a friend's house 2 weeks ago, and I felt there was a negative entity there. So I did the spirit box, and I did an EVP, and I captured a remarkable EVP. And it says, get out, totally demonic voice. I felt the imps were there. I said, oh my God, the imps are here. Because I know that feeling of imps. I go, what are the imps doing here? And then all of a sudden you hear this demonic voice go, get out. And I thought at first it was saying to me, but right after it, you hear these like childlike voices go, okay. And as if this demon is telling the imps to get out because I can sense them. Well, what's remarkable is what you're talking about, Goliath, the giants, is while doing the spirit box, about 30 seconds, a minute before we get this voice of get out, the spirit box, I says, is it who's in this house, the spirit? I said, is it a ghost or entity? It says neither. I go, neither. And it says demonic, demon. I said, okay, where did this demon come from? And my friend says, did this come from this one hospital I went to investigate that was really dark? It says, no, Deuteronomy. I said, Deuteronomy? I go, that's a part of the Bible. So I said, what do you mean Deuteronomy? And then it says Titans. So I Googled Deuteronomy Titans. Oh my God, the Nephilim and the fallen angels and stuff which created the Titans, they were born of men and women, were the Titans, and then the Titans were killed off by man before the Great Flood, and one of the descendants of the Titan is Goliath. These Titans were 15 feet tall, 12 feet tall. Goliath is believed to be about 9 or 10 feet tall, because after the bloodline, they kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter because they were mixed with our blood. And I'm like, oh my God, this demon is one of the Titans that was killed off and is still roaming the earth because its spirit can't go to heaven because it's contaminated. It's an offspring that is tainted. So its spirit is still here. Bill, I never would have known that. I never would have thought of that. But it's coinciding exactly what you're saying right now. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had to play that in there.
No. And you're right. There is a very close tie to all of that. And there's a common thread through it, and I haven't found the common thread, but I will. Or at least I'll keep looking. I think you can empathize with this, and anybody that's been through this can empathize with it. When a person's been through what we've been through, then you have a thirst for knowledge about what it is. You really search for explanations because you've been through hell, and you want an answer as to why and what's causing it. And my first goal was self-preservation because I did not think I was going to survive this. I truly didn't. And I didn't tell a lot of people that. And I don't know that I even told anybody that. But I had, in my mind, very high doubts that I was going to survive this. And I was in a corner because my options were to stay and fight and hopefully survive it, or to run. And if I ran, then, as it says in the show, and it's very true, the only two things that could happen is that I passed my troubles on to another family that could quite possibly have children, and I couldn't live with myself having done that. So the other option was they followed me anyway, and I gained nothing. So really, there wasn't an option to run. The only option left was fight. And I wasn't being particularly brave. That in my mind was the only option that I had left, and so I had to stay and fight. And to do that, I had to learn. And I've almost immersed myself in it all these years, and I'm sure you have as well, as have most people that's done this. And I still can't answer some of the questions like you asked, that where did they come from, what are they? Maybe it's not for us to know. I do know that fear is their greatest weapon, and that's what they use to wear us down. And I'm pretty sure, although they have the abilities to possess people and make people do things to you, they possess the body, not the spirit. But I don't know. I don't know that there's one formula other than try to have a deep understanding and faith that they can't kill you. They can only wear you down to the different points of oppression, obsession, possession, and maybe make you hurt yourself or make others hurt you.
I agree with that. It got to a point where I felt that, they're doing this. There's really nothing more I can do anymore. I mean, I've tried everything. Every time I try something, I get knocked back down. And then something changed in my psyche till I realized, wait a minute, if I keep thinking, regardless that they're doing this to me, but if I give them that power saying that they're in control, they're doing this, there's really nothing more I can do, then I've given up. I've lost the battle. And I think when I changed that perception, then also started cleaning my life up just a little bit, being careful of whatever I was doing or saying, taking more control of that, I started seeing myself, instead of being trapped, I felt like I was trapped in this cloud. Some people said, well, I have a black cloud over my head. Well, I had a black cloud on me, not over my head. I was in it. I was in it. And I said, exactly. I'd rather have a black cloud following me than be in it. So I now have it following me. I'm no longer in it. That's a good start. So I think you have to get to that point. And, you get to a point where you just want to give up. I mean, don't get me wrong. I personally, consciously, healthy-wise, would never kill myself. But I cannot tell you how many times they've told me to kill myself, or I've thought of it just to get it to end. But even though I've made a pledge that I would never do that, but I've had other people that were close to me start to tell me I should kill myself. And even though there may have been disagreements or arguments with this person, for them to go to that level to say that time and time again is realizing that they are now under the influence. And like, do the whole world a favor, kill yourself. I'm like, who the hell would say that? And yet this was words coming out of an individual's mouth. And to hear that, you realize that they'll use other people against you to make you believe it so that you will harm yourself or harm someone else. And Bill, how do you still have this going on in your house now, or is it kind of slowed down a little bit?
The reason I'm so strong a believer in, and you said it a while ago, you control, or you give them the power to control you inadvertently. We actually give them permission, but not in a way that we realize we're doing it, and that's a lot longer conversation than we have time for now. But I do have things happening. I do have activity. Since I had that, and to be honest with you, I got to the point where I cared, but I didn't care. I didn't know whether I was going to survive or not survive. But what I did know was that I was tired of the hell that I was living in. And I was literally living in hell here. I never had 1 minute's peace, one hour straight sleep. I couldn't close my eyes without opening them. I got to the point where I didn't sleep at night at all. I'd be awake all night because I couldn't sleep because of things that would happen. And I'd try to catch what sleep I could during the day. And I was wore out. I was living in hell. I was tired of it. And I got to the point where it was going to be me or it. And that's when it showed in the show that it crashed something. And I went there and told it to manifest itself, and in Christ's name I was going to send it to hell, or it was going to send me to hell. But either way, it was going to end that day. And I tell people, for 30 minutes, it was like The Exorcist. There was crashing all over the house. And every time it crashed, I would go in there and say, I don't fear you anymore. You've got me to the point. I am not the same person you started with. I've learned. I've grown. I don't fear you. Manifest yourself. We're going to have a fair fight. And one of us is going to hell today. This ends today. And at the end, I said, you can't do it. You don't have the authority, and I just called your bluff. Now get out. And it just, Chris, it just changed. It lifted. It became almost normal. Now, since then is when the phone calls started. And the only thing I can figure is that I've banished it or bound it from my home, and I equate it to like a mad dog on a chain, desperately trying to break that chain. And the way it's trying to break it is through interrupting my phone calls and trying to get a reaction from me to give it permission to come back in. I have had things thrown in my house still. I've had audible voices. In fact, the last time Brian and his team were over here, they heard an audible voice in my bedroom, and they actually captured it on digital recorder also. I've had a basket thrown off my dresser. Yesterday I heard a loud crash in the kitchen. Things that you can pass off or you can call them paranormal. I can. Now, obviously, the basket thrown off of my dresser, there's no explanation for that. That has to be paranormal. The voices have to be paranormal. But I don't feel the evil anymore. I don't feel that evil any longer, and it's why I've got the theory that the little imps are pretty dull-witted or dim-witted. They don't have a lot of intelligence, and they run around doing all these little prankster things. And because they're unknown, they can scare us, but they're kind of without guidance. They're kind of like you said, well, go children without guidance. They're like a bunch of 5-year-olds let go with no adult supervision.
Oh, Bill, I had my kitten when I got my one white kitten. She was pushed into the toilet, completely terrified.
Oh, wow.
Another time, this was about 2 months ago, I was walking out of my office. She's asleep on the dining room table. I see her get swiped off the table, literally slide across the table as she was sleeping. And as she's being slid across the table, she opens up her eyes, and then she jumps off the table, completely terrified, and looks back up at the table and goes and hides underneath the table. And then she wouldn't even let me come near because she thought maybe I did it. And I'm like, and I just started, I did laugh a little bit because I knew what they were doing, but then I'm like,
sure.
The poor kitten is now skittish, just completely terrified of things because of things they've done to her. And I realize she can see them and sense them. So yeah, they will do these things. They'll throw objects, they'll affect pets or whatever. And it got to a point where I said no more. Did some cleansing, and I'm hoping that there'll be a long calm period before anything happens again. That they're gone, at least for now.
And what you just described is, like I said, typical things a 5-year-old without supervision might do.
Right.
Right. And I don't know that that's right. That's just a theory that I have, that without that evil supervision to direct them to do specific things, they're just like a bunch of kids running around doing little prankster things. But I don't feel the evil.
That's good.
And thank God. Yeah.
What's next for you now? What are you going to be doing now? What are you working on? I mean, you've got the group that you started, United Paranormal International. What have you based your intent on now since you've gone through these experiences?
I have no plans to do any more appearances. I did this show for you as a friend.
I appreciate that.
I don't have any desire to become to gain any notoriety from this. The only reason I've hung on in the paranormal world is maybe what little help I can give other people. I don't have any books in the works. I don't have any other TV shows that I care to do. I guess is to stay in the background and maybe even gradually slip away back into somewhat of a life that I had before. The thing that keeps me from doing that and I'll be retiring from my website again. I actually retired once and came back to redesign it, reorganize it. But I've got really good people there. And by the way, if anybody that's never been there, it's a wonderful place. There's no drama. You're free to go view your belief or espouse your beliefs as you believe. Explain things how you believe, and nobody's going to attack you for it. But I'm going to retire from that again because I want to do other things. But mainly what keeps me involved is to help people. And if I can use my knowledge to help other people, I don't know that there's any black and white answers. There's only guidance. There's only reassurance that, hey, I've lived through this and I didn't die. But I seem to have come out the other side whole and healthy. And yes, I have things happen in my house, but they're things that would scare a normal person half to death, but they're just harmless little things that, throw in the basket or doing this or doing that.
Right.
But there is hope. And I guess that's what I want to give people. And I want to do the thing that this does not want. I want to expose it.
Right. And that's the same exact thing that I'm doing. After this thing came back, I realized I can't hide from this anymore. I don't care what people think, skeptics or whatever else. This is real. I can only imagine the people since lifetime that have dealt with this and not survived. And I hate to think that I would just put my head between my legs and walk through my whole life not saying anything or doing anything about it, because I can believe, I can be a voice that can wake people up and give some people some strength to overcome this, whether it's with faith or whatever else, that this doesn't happen to them. Bill, two things. One, everybody listening, please check out Bill's website that he was mentioning. It's United Paranormal International.ning.com. That's United Paranormal International.ning.com. The second thing is I've always had a strong faith, and it doesn't matter what specific religion you are, as long as you have a strong faith in a creator, in God. I mean, if you believe in these devils and demons, you see it happening, you've got to believe that there's a higher power, that there's angels and there's other things. They must exist as well. And I do believe in God. I do believe in Jesus Christ as a Catholic. And I pray to him when I say Jesus Christ, our Lord, our Son of God, and I ask for his protection when I deal with these things. But in the last month, I started praying again every single night, saying the Our Father or Hail Mary every single night. I've been doing that. I've also been saying grace when I eat, which I haven't done since I was a child. That has empowered me and strengthened me. And then I'm hoping to start going back to church too, get myself up Sunday morning and go to church, just because I realize that if I'm really going to get through this, I've got to go back to just giving thanks in my faith to not only empower and strengthen me, but to make sure that I have that connection with the other side, which I know I do, but sometimes we can stray away from it. Because I know people are going to listen and say, well, what do we do? How do we make sure? And I said, well, the thing is to pray, but to totally believe in your prayers and be it honestly, but have intent and purpose behind it and lead a good life. I mean, I stopped drinking alcohol socially. Not that I was getting drunk all the time or anything like that, but I did notice that if I did get tipsy or drunk, I would start saying things I wouldn't normally say. That could be the alcohol speaking, but knowing the paranormal field, knowing demons and stuff, they can also influence you to say things or do things you would never do. And you'd be like, oh my God, the devil made me do it. Where do you think that came from? That's what I'm saying, that if I'm going to get through this, I have to watch every single thing I do. And that's what I've started doing. I've taken the initiative. And that's what I'm telling people out there listening. Take the initiative. Regain control. Reestablish your faith. Start praying. Watch what you put in your body, mentally, physically, spiritually, and then you'll be on the road to recovery.
Now, I'll add something for the overly logical people. I don't think that it can be argued effectively against the fact that there is equal and opposites of everything: light, dark, hot, cold. And the same goes with good and evil. You can't possibly have evil as we have experienced without a countering force of good, because if there wasn't a countering force of good, evil would have taken over already. It's that strong. There is, for you may not see the good visually like we've seen the evil, but it's there, and it's effectively countering the evil or limiting it. And if you call on the good's there. It will come to aid you, but with a price. And there's a term in physics, and I'm not going to get into it, but that there can't be a void. Something will always fill it. And if your person isn't filled with goodness and grace and a belief in something good, then there's something bad out there that's going to come and fill it.
Right.
And that's the thing people need to understand. And the other thing is, in the history of evil, I can't cite one example, not one, and some people argue Annalise McKell, who died of possession, they say, but she starved herself to death. I can't cite one example of a demonic force directly killing anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I can cite you examples where they've possessed other people to do bad things, but I'm going to say as a fact that people are not evil, but people can do evil things. Evil is a force much stronger than any human can do, but they can be directed to do or possessed to do evil things, and there's a huge difference. And I hope I explained that good enough.
I think you did, and I think that's a fine way to end this episode of Spirit Talk. For those listening, once again, please check out the episode of Paranormal Witness called The Visitors. You definitely will not be disappointed to get a little bit more of Bill's story. Also, please visit him on his website, United Paranormal International.ning.com.
And they can also find me on my Facebook page under my name, Bill Vaile, Vaile. That's where most people are going right now, too.
Wonderful. Well, Bill, I want to thank you very much for being an incredible guest and to taking the time out in your day to speak to not only me, but also to my listeners and share your experience.
Well, thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Once again, this is Chris Fleming and my guest, Bill Vaile, on Spirit Talk. Thank you for listening.